You are now watching The Boom Show, where I interview authors, educators, thought leaders, and inspiring people with great stories of how they overcame obstacles and turned those obstacles into opportunity for success. My name is Rahz Slaughter, aka The Motivator. I am known as the teen coach who brings the boom, building open-minded, optimistic, and motivated teens. If this is your first time watching the show, thank you so much. I'm excited for you to be here. And more importantly, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and leave us any questions you have. Now let's get to this show. Today's guest is Gregg Havass. He is the CEO of WordsPerfect Incorporated. He is a copywriter for brands all over the world, but more importantly, he lives here in South Florida where he does amazing work. He is the creator of the Top of the Middle program. We're going to dive deep into what that is. It's all about social emotional learning, inspiring young people so that they can see the world through their own lenses. And I'm excited to tell you that Gregg has helped over 3,000 students. Now, this is not a man who just talks about it. He was bullied and beaten and traumatized as a young man. He learned to overcome those challenges. More importantly, so not he didn't just survive, but he thrived through life, inspiring his own son to do great things in school and become a powerful young man. I'm excited for this interview. Let's get into it. As always, boom. We are back with my main man, Gregg. Gregg, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, Rahz. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I am excited for this opportunity to connect with you. You are someone who I've met recently, but we instantly had a connection, and I felt like we were friends. And to have a Long Island connection as well here in Florida is great. So real quick, though, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about who you are and your backstory. Where are you from? And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what you're doing right now, which I'm really excited to share with the audience.
Okay. I was born in New Jersey, raised in Long Island, New York, and moved down here to Florida after college. I have a copywriting and marketing consulting firm that's started back in 2001. So we're on year 20, which I'm very proud of. And I specialize in, my company specializes in creating content that enables people to compete with any brand in their locality or industry. And we brand products and services to consumers, businesses, and the media. That's my mainstay. The other program, the Top of the Middle program, is a program that I originally created for my son when he was back in 5th grade. He's 23 now, of course. But when I created that for him, it was to prepare him for middle school, becoming a teenager, and all of the things that go along with that, the decisions that they have to make, the things that they need to kind of watch out for. And it's important to give them a little bit of a heads up before they're faced with those decisions, so they have an opportunity to make the right decision for them, for their life and their future. A lot of the times kids don't have a lot of guidance, especially the children in the schools in which I conducted my program. And it's a real shame that they don't have that kind of guidance. And it's really the difference in a lot of them between success and failure, or I should say, best managing a bad situation so they can kind of cut the chain and move on in a forward direction, in a positive direction in their life.
This show is built on 3 pillars, open-mindedness, being optimistic, and motivated. Share with me a little bit about, what does the word optimism or optimistic mean to you and what the work you're doing right now?
Well, optimism to me is to be able to have hope and look at the sunny side of things rather than having a negative approach to everything. And sometimes it's easy when you're younger, especially if you're going through a bad time, that optimism can get clouded. And it's very, very hard to pull yourself out of it once it starts to get the best of you. And it just leads to a lot of bad things, bad decisions, bad friends, bad everything. When you have hope and you're optimistic about things, you see the possibilities in front of you rather than every bad thing that was behind you. You don't want to live in the rear view because of all of the great things that may come to you or you may be able to have in your life. And I think there are a lot of kids out there, they don't know how to switch the view to forward. They're stuck in the past for a variety of reasons. And that happened to me too. I'd be the first one to say that happened to me too. And rather than moving forward with a clear head because of everything that happened to me, I really couldn't, I was stuck in reverse. And I had to teach myself a lot of things like coping skills and forgiveness, which I think is really was the game changer for me. And just for kids watching out there, that's not to forgive someone and let them off the hook for the bad things they've done to you. That's actually to let you off the hook for the bad things that happened to you. And it's really, really important. I know I didn't know how to do it. A lot of kids didn't. And through everything that I've learned, I try to shorten that road so that when things happen, they're able to be a little bit more hopeful because of the lessons that I instill in them through the program.
Absolutely. That's great. Now, I know that you're sharing some real great nuggets here, but can you just take us back to a time in your life where you had to use some of these coping skills? Because we know that kids are going to be, faced with so many different difficulties with social media and bullying and things like that, whether it's abuse at home. And you have these skills now. You've created an amazing program that we're going to get into. But I want you to tell us a little bit about Gregg. What are some of the challenges that you had to overcome as a young youth?
Well, for several years, I was severely bullied, had my silence coerced through it. My parents largely didn't know what was going on. And it just destroyed me. In fact, I almost took my life at the age of 12. It zapped my spirit, my will to live. I took no joy in all of the things that I used to like, my friends and sports and, stuff you're into at that age. And it was really, really hard to get through from one day to another. I didn't really see the point of it all. I was very depressed. And I really didn't want to do anything. I didn't take joy in my life. And as things progressed, I never really got help for it. I was, I guess, embarrassed or scared or whatever, or coerced to not say anything. And it just sunk me deeper and deeper and deeper until I was really in kind of a desperate place. And, they say time heals all wounds, but that's not necessarily true unless you're taking the steps to correct whatever happened to you, or at least best manage it. Problem is, at that age, I didn't know what coping skills to do. I wanted nothing to do with forgiveness because I was just filled with hate for what happened to me. And I was depressed and just had every bad, anxious and frustrated. I had no confidence in myself for anything. And it just really diminished me in every way. It took me further and further away from the kid I was before it until I didn't even recognize who I was. And that's a bad place to be when you're 12 years old.
Absolutely. What do you think the educational system, or because it's obvious that they failed you in recognizing and supporting you in that process, what do you think they could have done that would have helped you? And possibly through this interview, we can start a conversation and help anyone else who may be at risk or going through what you had to endure.
Well, I don't think the system failed me necessarily because they didn't know. I had pretty good grades. My mom taught me to read before I even went to a public school. I was reading, like just really reading. This is something that I passed on to my son, So what happens is, because I read so much and I actually used reading as the only things that gave me any pleasure. And I read everything I could get my hands on. As it turned out, because I read I'm such an avid reader, in a very short period of time, it became a matter of rote. Not just a matter of writing with proper grammar, punctuation, spelling, syntax. I don't mean that. I mean just to be able to gather and communicate my thoughts effectively and express them to others. And that was very important, very helpful to me because nothing else seemed to be working at the time. I wrote a lot, and it was kind of, reading and writing was an escape for me, actually, something I looked forward to at a time where I didn't really look forward to much in my life. So through reading and writing, that was one of the things that had helped me. But what I find most of all, because I've conducted my program for approximately 3,000 students, mostly in Title I schools, some kids at the Broward County Detention Center, and mainstreamed autistic, children with autism, Asperger's, ADHD, and learning disabilities. First, I conducted the program. Then they asked me to, work with kids in the jail, teen inmates. And then they asked me to recreate my program for mainstream DSE students, which I'm proud to say performed, on the whole, performed every bit as well, and in many cases better than even my public school students, which I was pleasantly surprised to find. And they really were, that was singularly the best teaching experience I ever had in my life. I wish I had videos of that for, your kids, and you can't tape it or anything, but their will to press on in spite of their disabilities and dealing with it from day to day, which to them is a lot harder than we think it ever is. And their desire to move themselves forward was really very inspirational to me, considering what they're going through in their life to live day to day, which most things you and I would just take for granted. Well, it's a struggle for them. And I find that within the school system, I don't know if it's because policies are made by people who don't have a background in education. They certainly don't seem to ask the teachers what they need, because a lot of these policies really adversely affect teachers and students. But I think the need for what they don't have now, and it's a really, they sorely need a much greater emphasis on social emotional learning. And, there are some schools where you'll have, I don't know, 1 or 2 social workers for hundreds of kids. I don't know how that works, but it must not work very well, because I've been serving this district as a volunteer since the early 2000s, conducted that program between 2011 and 2019 for about 3,000 kids. I've never seen the social emotional situation, the problems with behavior, anxiety, PTSD, et cetera, in a lot of these schools. In fact, all of the schools that I've been in, I've never seen the problem worse. I have over 100 teacher friends here in South Florida. They tell me the exact same thing. And I'm friends with lots of parents with children that are still in school. And it is not an easy thing. The fact of the matter is, we forget as adults, it's not so easy being a kid. We wish we were kids again, because, we're older and we would like to, get that fountain of youth. But in that youth, there's a lot of kids out there, not just in the Broward School District, which was, I believe, the 6th largest in the country. But to overlook the need for something like that, particularly when you have so many Title I students and schools, I just think that's somewhat negligent, and to think that everything will take care of itself is really not. That's just not true at all. There needs to be much greater emphasis. I know I'm not the only one with a program like mine. I just happen to have created for my own son. I never had any intention of doing any of this, but I could see, because of the time spent in these schools and many different schools, that there was a lot of kids there that were just really not handling it well. Not handling their life, what was happening to them. They were all turning into, starting to become teenagers. The changes in their body, changes in their mind, the issues that they have at home. A lot of the time, those issues that they have at home, you don't know about in school until it's much too late.
That is why, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. But just for those who may be watching, you put 2 things out there I want you to kind of clarify for them. One is Title I, and 2 is social emotional learning. You and I know what that means, but someone watching this, what is social emotional learning? And I mean, what does that really mean? Because I know it's a buzzword and a lot of people talk about it. I know that you understand it at its core.
A lot of children, particularly in Title I schools, which I'd come to learn when I said, the teacher originally recruited me to do this, said that to turning their school into a Title I school, you're the only dad, mentor, and volunteer in our school. One, you. And she says that the behavior, the academic, the behavioral, social, emotional issues were really overriding on a lot of these kids. She worried that they didn't have a dad or a positive role model in their life to love them, encourage them, be compassionate, show them guidance, have their back kind of in all of those ways. And when a kid doesn't have that from maybe a dad or a mom, that's just an awful thing. So the the Title I schools, generally I've come to find as somewhat lower on the socioeconomic scale. They're usually in areas where there's demonstrated living at or below the poverty line. Not always, mind you. Mm-hmm. And I must say that kids who are at risk, it's not just kids on the poverty line. I've seen kids with wealthy parents that were really going through some torment, and it was just horrible. Look what happened to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas with that shooting. How many of those kids who witnessed it or knew the families or were in other schools nearby? You had thousands of kids, parents, teachers, everything affected by an incident. As I come to understand, a lot of those kids didn't get the help that they need. Some did, a lot of them didn't. I would beg to say most of them didn't. And when you don't get help for it and time goes on, they say time heals all wounds. Well, I think that's just a matter of perspective. If you're learning coping skills and forgiveness and everything else, time becomes an ally. If you don't know that and you're just stuck in the hate and self-loathing and everything else, every day feels like 100 years. And that's not a good thing for kids. It's not a good thing for adults either. So those schools generally, I found, had lots of kids on a large scale that really needed social emotional learning, which comes down to getting in touch with their feelings, what causes their feelings, why they feel the way that they do, what are things that they can do to help improve things. For instance, I would meet with students, and we would have I would ask them. I'd sit at the bulletin board, dry erase board, and they'd be writing themselves, and we'd put a list of the things people can do when they're feeling depressed, sad, anxious, whatever. What can you do to kind of even you out and turn that frown upside down? And we would make a long list, and I would have them write all of these things down, and I would tell them, make a copy of this or share this with at least one person, a sibling, a friend, particularly kids that maybe like yourself, are not handling things very well. They could be sad, they could be anxious, they could be depressed. I would imagine a lot of these kids who were born into a life of violence, abuse, neglect, poverty, whatever. I don't know the exact classification, but either they have PTSD or some sort of social emotional disorder, anxiety disorders, whatever. I see it. I talk to them. And by social emotional learning, I think they come to an understanding of feelings, why they have them, why they were caused, how do you best manage that and move forward in your life in a positive and productive way. I tell all my students the first day that I speak to them, every one of you has unlimited intelligence, talent, and potential. Of course, they all look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, well, I know that some of you might not believe me, but by the end of this year, every one of you is going to know exactly what I mean. And then it's your decision. It's not mine. I don't live your life. But what a shame it is when you have unlimited intelligence, talent, and potential, and that light bulb finally goes off in your head that you do. To not take full advantage of that is just like the worst thing in the world. Once you kind of get in that, like, hey, I can do this, just say it to everything that you want in your life. And I think that that's really important. Another aspect that's not taught, which is a cornerstone of my program, is goal setting. Without goals, yes. Kids are just like a ship without a rudder, and they don't know how to behave in school. They don't know what to do at home. How do they put it all together to have the best day possible? They're not shown that either. And generally, because of whatever's happening at home, that they're not living that either. So to them, it's just an unknown. So if they had that kind of learning, and I would say to start that in elementary school. When I first started my program, I thought that the material might be a little bit too sensitive for kids in elementary school. However, there was a social worker where I conducted the program in one high school, and the social worker sat in on every single presentation I gave, and she said to me, "You're wasting your time here." So I'm like, well, I would beg to differ. These kids are doing a lot better than when I first started working with them. She goes, "I don't mean that." She goes, "By this age, it's just much harder to deal with them on this level." She goes, "You should be doing this in elementary school." So I was like, well, I actually was referred to this principal. I was friends with the principal in the middle school that I was working. The principal's like passed me around. So, I said, she said, "Listen, it's that bad." And I'm a social worker, so I deal with all different ages, but she says that it needs to start in elementary school. I'm like, "You sat through the program, you saw the content that I discussed. You don't think that's a little bit too mature or maybe something that you wait a year?" She said, "Absolutely not. Start them in 4th or 5th grade." Just
Yeah.
get them with that understanding, so that by the time they get out of this little cocoon of elementary school, now they're in middle school with bigger kids and different things. Kids are developing, some faster than others. You kind of it's good to already be in the mix and to know what to do rather than just get blindsided. It's like overwhelming for some kids. And if they had issues socially and emotionally in middle school, in elementary school, without any kind of guidance, a lot of that stuff doesn't solve itself. It just gets worse.
Yes, sir.
So, and anyway, to answer your question on the social emotional learning, I think it's really, really important for kids to get in touch with themselves, their feelings, their emotions. A lot of them aren't. And as a result of that, they don't respond to them, they react to them with violence, bad behavior, drugs, alcohol, gang activity, not treating themselves right, not treating their teachers or their families right. And for kids who are really buried deep into that, I would imagine a lot of them are not very happy with themselves, maybe even hate themselves, and just project that out onto everyone and everything because they just don't know. There is no other outlet for them.
A word from our sponsor. As a parent, it is emotionally draining to see your child suffering from low self-esteem, lacking confidence, and social skills. Rahz and Michelle Slaughter's book, Student Success Secrets, unlock the 7 secrets for developing inspired, motivated, success-driven teens is a must-read book for every emerging teenager. Purchase a copy today at rahzslaughter.com or amazon.com. Absolutely, man. If you guys cannot see the passion that Gregg has, I love it. Gregg, I mean, I want you to just tell us, I mean, the name of your program is Top of the Middle. Yes. What was the inspiration for that name? Because it automatically came to mind when I saw it. I was like, I want to know the story behind that.
Well, okay. I created the program originally, probably around 2008 when my son was in 5th grade to prepare him for middle school. When he was in the thing worked much better than I expected. He was a straight A's all the way through middle school, one of their best students. In fact, one day I was picking him up. He stayed after to tutor kids in math and language arts. And his principal grabbed me in the hallway and she said, I needed to speak to you about your son. So I'm like, why is he in trouble? He's not like a troubled kind of kid. She's like, no, he's one of our best students. In fact, I just had a long talk with him and I need to know what you're doing at home. Because this kid is like off the charts smart and he's just a really good kid. And she says, we have a lot of kids that, are really struggling socially, emotionally, and everything. You're our only dad. And I was really kind of hoping that you would help us out in that way. So I said, well, I created this program for my son. It was then unnamed. I didn't, it didn't have a name. It was just that. So she had asked, I said, I'd be more than happy to help. I volunteer in all of these schools anyway and mentor kids. So she says, well, I'll give you a couple of classes to work with. So because we were in middle school and a lot of these kids were low performing and had issues socially, emotionally, I called it the Top of the Middle program because they were in middle school and I wanted to move them from the bottom to the top.
I love it.
So that's the genesis of that, of how that name occurred. So in October 2011, the 2 classrooms full of kids she gave me became 6 classrooms full of kids by the end of the year, and 15 classrooms in 3 different schools the next year, and so on and so forth. So 3,000 kids later, here we are.
Awesome, man. I love it. I mean, I'm such a true believer that we need to figure out a way collectively. And I love that you use the, parents, kids can teach other kids. Collaborative learning is so powerful. Leadership. It's something that I do with my basketball team where I'm having, rather than everyone look at me for what to do, I'm inspiring and motivating other players who are better to lift other players who are less than socially inept at playing basketball. And I'm utilizing some of the same social emotional skills that you teach in your course, as well as mine in my course. And I find it so needed, but so many parents are lacking those social emotional skills and understanding as well. What do you do when you come across a parent who doesn't understand feeling, sees a kid who's maybe really creative and steers them away from that for something more practical? Have you ever had to have a conversation like that with a parent?
In most cases, when I went into these schools, I didn't meet their parents, although my parent contact generally because they're all local schools. So I'd see them in Publix or Walmart or at a restaurant or gas station. And the kids would come up to me most of the time because they weren't driving. They're with their mom or dad. Hey, mom, this is the guy that helped me with my goals, or this is the, and I would meet them. It was like a real special thing, and but generally I would go into the school. They would, all right, this classroom and everything. So I'd go to that classroom. I didn't have much contact with their parents. And for the most part, I didn't need to have contact with their parents to know what was going on. And it wasn't pretty. So I just took it for granted that most, if not all, and if there were exceptions, excuse me, but I just figure most or all of the kids were being impacted socially, emotionally, academically for certain. And that I just said, okay, there's probably a lot of kids in that, but there were kids who were getting straight A's that needed the social and emotional learning, because I saw in some kids, they used, for whatever was happening at home, they used school as like a sanctuary, and they totally excelled in it because it was the only thing that was theirs. That They feel that they had any kind of control over, they owned it. They didn't own anything at home. Wasn't much at home. A lot of abuse, neglect, or whatever was going on at home. But the school was several hours a day away from that, a sanctuary away from that, something where that could bring out the best in them. I had done work years ago for a woman named Connie Harrell. She used to be the director of mental health for Broward County. One of the smartest and most intuitive people, psychologists I've ever met in my life. Boy, did this lady know kids. She had them totally pegged. And she told me, you could take kids in the worst inner city situation, and they will use school as that sanctuary. They have everything bad going on at home: drugs, violence, prostitution, shootings, gangs, alcohol, everything that they shouldn't be exposed to. Late parties and noise. Well, these kids are supposed to be sleeping and with a belly full of food, and they weren't getting that either. And she told me that these kids could come from that, such a bad start, but because school becomes something that kind of saves them, it's the only thing that they have that's what's normal these days, normal in their life, or something that's theirs. And they wind up excelling and really being like super achievers and having, really important and big jobs. She says the unfortunate thing is that's few and far between, because for a lot of kids, because of what's going on at home, they wind up acting out in school because they're getting no attention at home, good or bad. And they need a voice. They need someone to recognize them. I think a lot of the worst behavior is, frankly, just a cry for help.
Yes.
For the kids who are most impacted, and those are the kids I worry about most. Not the ones that are being helped by what I'm doing, the ones that I can't reach. Boy, I used to agonize over that. My teacher friends would say, you're doing a lot of work just concentrate on the bunch that do it. I said I could do that, but it's not like they're out of my line of vision. I mean, they're right there. Am I not going to think about them? I'm a parent too. Very loving parent and educator. So a lot of these kids who didn't kind of have it at home, who were at a bad spot, they used the school as kind of like a buffer, and they did real well. But she told me the sad thing is that most kids, it's not that way. We kind of hope it would be that way, but it's just not. And she says they're so adversely impacted, and most of them don't get the help they need, especially when the source of the abuse and neglect is coming from the only person who could take them for that help. They don't want to get found out on what they're doing, and there's plenty of that goes on. So anyway, regarding the parents, I would say that maybe there should be educational programs for parents to best deal with their kids. They could do networking like we do networking, with our businesses, and for greater understanding and context and wanting to be the best parent. I think a lot of people maybe think they're great parents or good parents, but even if they are, overall, there's probably stuff that they should be teaching their kids that they're just not getting. So the social emotional learning, even for kids who are pretty well adjusted and doing pretty well with their grades, a lot of them really need the social and emotional learning just as much as some kid is disaffected and really in the worst time of his life. So I think that they're both important. So I think teachers and really administrators, districts and everything, got to get on board with this. They're way behind the curve right now. And I know that some of them think that the job that they're doing is wonderful, and it's in a lot of cases hardly that, especially when they're overlooking the needs of, again, 270,000 kids. I can't say exactly how many of them has some sort of PTSD or social and anxiety disorder, or something that's really dragging them down. I don't know what it is. Half, 2/3 or more, but even half of that is 140,000 students. Where's the help for them? I don't see it. Not in the way that it needs to be. Right. So I am hoping that whoever hears this, if you have any pull, and it's not just me, there are a lot of wonderful programs around by people who just have a heart for children. They just want to help them. And to just blow that off, or not have access, bring them all in your community. They live by your school. Go ahead and do that. I don't know how in the world that would be bad for your kids, your students. Probably help them. Hopefully they're listening.
Absolutely. I'm sure that a lot of people who are going to watch this, and we're going to make sure to keep speaking from the top of the mouth and sharing everything that you're doing. I know that I'm invested in this for the long haul, because I truly believe, I love what you're doing earlier on. I believe that's where it needs to be. For me personally, I wish I had a mentor, someone to teach me some of the things. One of the things you told me off camera was self-love. I didn't have any of that. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to love others because it wasn't a part of my everyday life. I went about being cold and finding out ways to kind of just cope, and some of that coping was me lashing out, bullying, me being disruptive in class. And I was lucky enough to just kind of find the light and keep staring at it until it opened my eyes. So I think that what you're doing with your program, your passion, I think everyone is able to see that today. Does your child lack confidence, social skills, or motivation? Rahz Slaughter is a sought-after teen life coach, motivational speaker, and 20-year professional coach. He welcomes the opportunity to coach your teen on a one-on-one basis or as one of his students in his online groups. Rahz's coaching system will help your teen boost their confidence, improve their communication skills, and gain clarity about who they are and how they can reach their full potential in school, sport, and life. To learn more about the coaching programs or to schedule a consultation, call 1-800-509-9383 or visit us at our website at rahzslaughter.com. If you mention the Boom Show, you'll receive 10% off the coaching program that you enroll your child. I want to hit you off with 5 what I call boom questions. Okay. These questions are rapid fire. I want you to give me the first answer that comes to your mind, keeping it short so you can blast right through them. This is for those who maybe fast forwarded to the end and they're like, oh, I just want to see what he says at the end. Well, here you go. So real quick, one word that gets you excited, pumped up, or really in action mindset. What's one word?
Children.
Love it. Favorite athlete and why?
I don't know if anyone watches wrestling on TV, the fake one.
Yeah.
But when I was a little kid, my childhood hero was Bruno Sammartino, who was the champion, and the one up, the one up in the Northeast. And I was at wrestling matches. My dad took me, and I ran down to where they come out, and all the kids are hanging over the rail trying to. He came over and shook my hand. That was a pretty special thing, and so he was always like the good guy, So, I always, I know it's probably no one gives that as an answer, but as an athlete, that was huge to me. And at a time where I really needed that, that came in handy, really made my night. And so I think that, to have sports heroes, and everyone's probably a little bit different than that, but not just in sports, and it could be in anything. It could be God, it could be a president, it could be someone in our military, it could be your dad or mom. When I do the role model segment of my program, mom or dad are the 2 top answers in any school. But there are answers where there would be sports players, sometimes God, sometimes musicians, music performers, or individual performers or bands or stuff like that. I was fortunate enough to have some of them say me. which is kind of
awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, Bruno Sammartino, I don't even know if he's living. If you're out there, thank you.
That's great. Mine was the Ultimate Warrior. I love my favorite wrestler was the Ultimate Warrior.
He was good.
Favorite inspirational movie of all time?
Probably a few. I would say as a kid, Brian's song. The story of Brian Piccolo. He was on the Chicago Bears. He died of cancer, and he was best friends with Gale Sayers, who was, I think, a Hall of Famer, a really great football player. And I thought that was a great movie and inspirational. The Lou Gehrig story. I don't know if you've ever saw that with Gary Cooper. It was a great movie as a movie. Pride of the Yankees, I'm sorry, was the name of it. And I guess those were probably two of the most impactful movies in my life.
What's something that scares Gregg?
At this point in my life, not reaching enough children. Just knowing the severity and how the problem grows exponentially from year to year. I know a lot of people have their head in the sand or they whistle past the graveyard, but there is an overwhelming need for social emotional learning and other types of learning in our schools. The scary part of me is that you're going to have millions of kids. You have millions of kids right now that are disaffected. They're not getting that kind of help. They're falling through the cracks, and they're not going to disappear. Okay, and when you have that many kids en masse, and you're ignoring a problem, that ignoring the problem is going to create a whole much bigger problem that could impact all of us. And these are, I mean, we're put on this earth to help each other, and particularly children. If we're not going to do that, what are we doing?
Absolutely.
So I guess that worry would be just not getting enough kids the help they need. I don't even care if it's my program or anyone's, just get them the help that they need. Get them this help because they really need it. That worries me to no end.
That's great. And I really want to just, before I go into the last question, that's why I wanted to interview, because I want people to see that passion. I know there are a lot of other programs out there. There are people who are crusading this message and trying to get it out, but we have to find a way to come together and make sure that we can speak louder about social emotional learning, about the sector of the world that's not getting the attention that it deserves and needs greatly. Like when I get into a school or I'm working with a teen and I'm experiencing the things that they're going through, yes, they're fortunate enough to have us, but there's so many that don't. And we know that we can't reach everybody. And that's why I know there's someone who's watching this or going to watch this, need to get in touch with you, find out how we can get you into schools, because there are a lot of people who want to do this type of work, but don't really want to do this type of work. They just want it given to them. And you've been in the trenches for over 19 years, pushing it out there, getting it out there. So I salute you, my friend. The last and final question: if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do and why?
If I couldn't fail, it would have something to do with education, maybe as a superintendent or something. I don't know who it is, or maybe the people that create policies for schools, because I don't know who's steering that ship right now, but they're on the rocks. So if ideally I couldn't fail, I would want to have something to do with the way children learn, particularly from an early age, and address the situation that I've been addressing for 19 years and bring that front and center. I'm not failing at it now. I'm really grateful that so many kids, it worked well for them, and they helped me in many ways too. I'd like to say that I taught them more than they ever taught me, but I'm not sure if that's even true. So to bring out the best in students, it's not just ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. If we're able to help them socially and emotionally as well as academically, I combine all three in my program, because if I'm helping them socially and emotionally and academically, they're just tanking. That's kind of not really good for them either. I want them those things all moving in tandem. So I guess if I couldn't fail, I would be the one saying, here's the new policy that you're going to have in your school, and this is what you're going to be doing. And it would have something to do with that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else that I would rather be part of.
I don't think there probably is. I think that that's where your passion lies. Since I've got the opportunity to meet you and meet other people who know you, that's all they say. And that's what you sing every single day. And I know that's why your program is successful and it will continue to be successful. Let me ask you, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if anyone wants to visit my page on Facebook, it's at Top of the Middle. Just if you just put in a Facebook search thing, Top of the Middle, that'll get you. There's only one, that's me, my program. And currently I'm in Northwest Broward. People around the country may see it. But since I'm offering it on Zoom, it doesn't matter where in the country you are. If there's teachers, parents out there that do need help, I don't charge for this, so can't use that as an excuse. And the logistics, I can't make it there on time, I'll do it on Zoom. It doesn't matter, so they don't even have to leave their home. But for the summer, I'm running a special summer session of this program. It's an abridged program. I don't have as much time in the summer as I do in the school year, but that's free to any student from 4th grade to 8th grade. I had to put the qualifier in there. Who would like to participate. Moms and dads, teachers, just go to Top of the Middle on Facebook. Just leave me a message, put your contact information in there, and an email address and a phone number. I'll email you out the latest prospectus, which I just updated the other day for the upcoming school year. It has everything about the program, results over 8 years, lots of testimonials from teachers, parents, and guidance counselors. And if you would like at that point to put your child in it, they're 1-hour sessions, so it's not really that long, but they're very impactful. The lessons change from week to week. And so if they're in it once a week, that would be a really good thing. And I hope who's ever hearing me, please feel free to call in. I won't turn anyone away. Doesn't matter how many students want to do it. We can do it on Zoom. Look what we do on Zoom now. So, that at Top of the Middle is the address. So thank you for letting me put that plug in. And one other thing, many of you don't know me. Many of you may be new to Rahz as well. Well, we had our own little meeting about our history and what's happened to us through the years and how we came full circle. And this is a guy who's really plugged in, loves your children and students, in case you're still listening, and really has in his heart to help them. And he draws up, like me, he's had to draw on his own experience, work himself back to full circle, and use everything he's learned to help your students, not just socially and emotionally, but in other ways too. And I'm not sure if you're going to find a more dedicated or nicer person to conduct this, but it's highly recommended. And I know that because I do know the difference. So I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone to anything to anyone that I thought really wasn't going to get the job done. This guy does. So please know that. Whether you speak to me, you speak to him, he is here for you. This is his program, and he runs a terrific program. So, again, don't be afraid to if you have your own children, if you're a teacher with students, if you're a family member who sees a family member, friend, neighbors, kids, whatever it is, do what you need to do to get them the help that they need. They may not thank you for it now, but in years to come, it means everything. So please see Rahz. I'm sure your information is up there, and people call you anytime. Just incredibly nice and focused, and he really does the right thing. And your children would be better served by having someone like this in their life. Most kids, frankly, could just use that.
Thank you so much, my friend. I love everything you said there. I'm going to make sure in the description to have all your contact information, where they can find out about Top of the Middle, and more importantly, how they can reach you, get in touch with you, both on social media and any of the information and details that you provided me. Thank you so much for this, Gregg. I really do appreciate your time this afternoon. As always, guys, thank you guys for watching The Boom Show. My name is Rahz Slaughter. And remember, building open-minded, optimistic, and motivated teens is our game. Have a great day, everybody. Boom!